Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I am your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my co-host and good friend, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you once more. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing the moon and the moon signs.
Yes.
So this is going to be a general astrology conversation, and we're going to talk about moon signs in general throughout the different signs. And so it will be of relevance for everyone who's got a chart, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The moon is very important in the chart.
It is. It's huge. All right. So just to get us going, could you tell us a little bit, Arwynne, about what the moon represents in a chart?
Absolutely. And I've done a couple of presentations actually on the moon in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was about the moon and our relationships, because that's a very important thing to look at in your own chart as to how you comport yourself in relationships, and then obviously in a comparison chart as well. But just to begin with, the personality triad, of course, the Holy Trinity, is the sun, the moon, and the rising sign.
Yes.
And I have this great sort of visual in my head of the Earth's crust. You've seen those cross sections where they'll show the Earth with the crust around the outside, and then the mantle, which is the main part, and then the core, which is the very center. Mm-hmm. So I think that the rising sign is like the crust. That is the outside, the surface, the mask, what we present to strangers, the face we wear in public, and the very first impression that we make, whether we are aware of it or not. Then the mantle, or the meat of the chart, is the sun. This is the general impression that we have of ourselves. This is what we think of as our ego, who we are at heart, what motivates us, and who we think of ourselves as. And then the moon is the iron molten core at the center, or if you're going to think in candy terms, it's the yolk of the Cadbury cream egg. So it also, interestingly for this metaphor, it is what forms the magnetic poles, or the north and south node, the core, the magnetic core. So that's right. the metaphor of the earth and magnetic poles. So it's interesting as well that the brain is divided into three parts. So we've got the frontal cortex, the limbic system, and the amygdala. And the amygdala is what I'm comparing to the moon. This is the oldest of the three structures.
Right.
It's what governs our basic motor functions, our deepest memories, and what Freud might have called the id of the personality. And studies in neuroscience have shown that our emotions guide our actions just as much, if not more, than our logic or our higher functions. And when we feel uneasy in a situation that we can't rationally explain why, we often call it intuition, or we sort of will construct a plausible story that makes sense with our frontal cortex. That's what we use to construct stories and create our narrative about ourselves. But it's really those deeper emotions that sometimes actually drive our actions more than anything rational. And that is the moon in the chart.
That is a very interesting way to express it. I like the one about the Earth's crust. That I get that. That is quite good. But the way you've unpacked this brain here, because isn't that amygdala like what they call the reptilian yes,
brain? Yeah.
It's your fight or flight, or let me survive.
Exactly.
Run, hide, and fight, or whatever it is. Instant reaction.
Absolutely.
That is great. That is very interesting.
And it's also the oldest part of our personality, in the sense that your moon is often, it's the child within. It's the inner child. And it's when you're stressed out, or when you're kind of off your guard, that's often where your moon will express itself, is to like other people. Yeah, the default. When we're not thinking about what we want to act, or how we want to act or present ourselves, sometimes the moon sign will come out in those situations. When we're stressed, when we're sick, when we're taken by surprise, and we're uncomfortable. And that's also sort of the inner child coming out, I think.
That's very interesting, because because it's your the absolute core, then, isn't it? It's the original core.
Yeah.
Very interesting where you've put that there. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And another thing that's interesting about the chart, the moon in the chart, is that in traditional astrology, the symbolic language of the moon and the sun represented the sort of mother and father. Mm-hmm. And this, of course, doesn't, in modern astrology, necessarily have to be a man and a woman, or even a father and a mother. But it's not the actual people anyway. It's not the people who raised us specifically. It's our internalized images of them. So the moon is how you perceive your mother to be, whether she is anything like that sign that is your moon sign or not. And sometimes if there's multiple children being raised by the same mother, they can all have different moon signs, but that's because you each perceive your mother differently. You could have the same person raising all three children, And yet in different stages of her life, of the mother's life, she could represent a completely different type of mother to each of her children. And that's reflected in the moon sign.
That is great. That is, you do see that if like your moon sign is different to your brother's moon sign, and yet you have the same mother.
Yeah,
it's yes, I see that.
But I do have an example.
Okay,
it's like a theoretical sort of fictional example. So the moon is like how you perceive your mother to be. You know, maybe you have moon in Cancer, and you perceive your mother as the stay-at-home, nurturing kind of mother who had dinner on the table every night and never fought with dad in front of you. Or if you have your moon in Virgo, maybe you picture your mother as someone who was always correcting your grammar and telling you to wash your hands and saying, surely you're not wearing that outside. You know, whether she had anything in Virgo or not, that was how you perceived her. And the example that I have here is, this is a fictional sort of story about, let's say, two children who have different sun and moon signs. And this represents how they perceive their parents to be. So let's say the mother and father have their first child, and the child has the moon in Virgo, and they're the classic helicopter parents. They're always doting on the child. They're there to help with the homework. The mother is a tireless, hands-on helper. She's always driving the child to school. She's there with practical advice, helping with homework and craft projects, and you know all these Virgo things, right? Mm-hmm. And if the moon is well integrated, that's a great helpful thing that they grow up and they feel that was a wonderful mother to have. If the moon is not well integrated into their chart, if they have negative aspects to the moon, or if the child and the mother's chart have a lot of unhappy inter aspects between them, they may perceive the exact same behavior of that mother as meddling, critical, nagging, as though the child could never do anything right. And it's the same mother, it's the same behavior, but it's just perceived very, very differently.
Okay.
Now, let's say that same parent, the same set of parents, have a second child, and the second child has a moon in Libra. Maybe by now the parents have relaxed a bit. They've both gone back to work full time, and so child number 2 grows up with more freedom and autonomy than her older sister. She grows up seeing her mother as poised and fair and modeling a good work-life balance. Maybe she even thinks of her mom as her best friend, which is something that daughter number 2 or number 1 didn't feel because mother was much more involved with every little thing. So if the Libra moon is less integrated, of course, she might grow up feeling like she had to raise herself, that her parents didn't seem to care what she did unless it reflected poorly on them. This is a Libra sort of gone wrong thing. And a third scenario with the same parents, let's say the second child has a moon in Scorpio. And this is obviously, it's not a great placement for the moon in traditional astrology, but here's how different ways that could play out. Maybe the parents have gone through some financial hardships between the first and second child. Maybe their relationship was tested somehow by an infidelity, or maybe the child had an illness and they had to devote lots of time to the first child, and the second child went through feeling kind of betrayed and neglected and abandoned. Or, maybe it was the second child that had an illness. And so that, that motherly attention turned all to the second child. And so she felt sort of maybe smothered a bit by this motherly affection. And so when she grows up, she has trouble sort of separating. These are narratives that are possible ways of playing this out, right? And again, it's all very subjective because it's the same parents, but they could be perceived in all of these very different ways, depending on the moon of the child.
Yeah, it's very interesting that if they say, 5 years between one child and the next, then 5 years between the next child, that mother's life itself has developed, changed, become better, become worse, or whatever. So, it's quite interesting, this, isn't it? Yeah.
Definitely.
All right.
As we like to do sometimes, I have a quote from Stephen Arroyo, and he did write a few amazing books, maybe 40 or 50 years ago now, which are just absolutely wonderful for beginners, getting their feet wet in astrology and learning to interpret the planets through the signs, through the houses, through the elements especially. And this is one thing that he said about the moon, which I find really poignant and great. So he says, the moon is crucial to understanding each individual's emotional, security, and domestic needs. In a comparison of birth charts, it reveals much about the day-by-day interpersonal attunement, whether both people's habits together are comfortable or irritable, and whether they can give each other constant support over a long period of time. After all, the magnetic, explosive initial attraction between people, which is often shown by Venus and Mars, for example, is important, but what attracts you, Venus and Mars, may not sustain you. and that's the moon.
Right.
So it's very important in relationships, in relationship charts, and in interpreting how an individual approaches their relationships, as well as just interpreting it for your own personality.
Yes, it really is a core feature, isn't it?
For sure.
Okay, this is great. So let's have a look at the moon through the signs, and we'll perhaps start with the moon in Aries.
Absolutely. So this is obviously someone who, regardless of their sun sign, has an aggressive, ego-driven core. And that may be very different from how they present themselves on the surface. So this could be someone who maybe has, let's just say, they could be a Cancer, or they could be an Aquarius, someone who's got a kind of a cool and unruffled surface. But when they get angry, or when they're sick, or when they're out of their element, like trying to understand a new job, or trying to figure out their way around taxes or something like that, they could get unexpectedly testy and have just outbursts of rage that you have no preparation for, that you just don't see coming. And you're like, what the hell was that? This is what I'm just off the cuff thinking moon in Aries.
Yeah, the word I often use for this combination is incandescent.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and I did know someone who had the moon in Aries, and it was more to do with the meals and the cooking and the nurturing, and it was hot food. The plate, watch that, the plate's hot. The searing flames are coming out the pan. There's no salads. It's all seared stuff and
interesting.
Barbecue was big, roast to a crisp, and you're scraping the toast. It was all that sort of response, and saying, eat it while it's hot, because the moon is always your food, right?
Right.
And it's eat it while it's hot. And the food was so hot we couldn't eat it. It was like
so funny,
sizzling. Plates were sizzling, and I don't have this placement, but I'm not one to warm plates at dinner at all. But these people do. They warm their plates, and they want their steak sizzling, and
that's fascinating. Absolutely.
It's flash in the pan. It's ba-boom.
Yeah, for sure.
Like flambéed, I would say. Even that's how the emotions seem to come out, as well as we're going to have an argument to clear the air, and it would be
right.
Yes,
and it's just that outburst, that initial outburst, and it may just burn off and then go nowhere.
Yeah,
it's not like there's this simmering rage.
No,
it's not resentment. It's not backstabbing.
It's a flash in the pan. And it's gone.
And then it's gone, and they've forgotten about it, and they're like, "Well,
what are you talking about?
What?
Meanwhile, we're going licking our wounds somewhere in the corner."
Exactly, and they're like, "What? I don't understand why you're counting."
I know. Yeah. So our next one then would be the moon in Taurus. So this is where the moon's pretty well placed because it's in exaltation. Yeah. It's quite a comfortable position there.
Yeah. And Taurus is all about comfort and also food, but in a more kind of the luxury of food, like the chocolates and the strawberries and the things that sort of make you feel soup.
Meat and potatoes, I see this as.
Yeah, traditional.
Yeah, it's solid. It's
solid. It's a great word.
Substantial. None of this pecking away at things, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I find that you so frequently see somebody's moon sign reflected in what they eat and how they eat. Yeah. Because you don't realize you're doing it. Right. And it's a default reaction, and that's how it comes through the moon. And these are things that you learn at your mother's knee. Yeah. Meat and potatoes. And that's, Taurus, it's really is one of those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steak, egg and chips and all of those kind of meat and three veg things. It's all this sort of food that they like, whereas other moon signs are looking for something else, to be honest, to nurture themselves with.
For sure. Absolutely. And that's another great keyword for moon, how you nurture yourself, right?
Yes.
So, going back to Mars and Aries for a second, someone with Mars and Aries, when they want to comfort themselves, they might blow off some steam going to a batting range or something like that. Whereas Moon and Taurus, it's going to be all about a box of chocolates maybe or
a nice
glass of wine.
Nice fine wine.
Exactly.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Why not? Or
it's so interesting. You see
buying themselves some jewelry possibly because Taurus, it's all about luxury. Yeah.
That's great. And it's how you take care of yourself. If the world's been mean to you, you want to go and attend to your moon and, as I say, almost lick your wounds, as it were, and you do that through the nature of your moon sign.
For sure. It's the internalized mother.
Yes. Yeah.
Regardless of what your actual mother was like, it's the internalized mother. Yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Okay.
All right.
Let's have a look then at the moon in Gemini.
Yeah. That is an interesting placement because the moon is so watery and sort of solid, and Gemini is anything but.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting combination. Moon in Gemini, when it's uncomfortable, it's just going to babble. It might talk some nonsense.
I think words can.
It might regret what it says later because it does not know what it's saying when it's uncomfortable. It just might just ramble on and on. It might have a sort of a manic quality, almost an unhinged sort of,
But it's nurturing. It's through. I think they want to hear "I love you." They or a little note,
Yeah.
And these things. It's the
words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how it's said, and say it with feeling, right?
Yes, you don't tell me how you feel anymore, or
yes,
yeah, exactly.
We never talk anymore. Or one of those songs. There's always something about it.
Right. And this is another thing in relationships, how there could be a mismatch. If there's one person has the moon in Gemini and they think, well, love is coming home every night and telling each other how you feel. How was your day? Yeah. What did you do today? How, did you miss me? All of these things. And maybe someone with the moon in Cancer or Capricorn, it's the opposite. They want to just come home and cocoon under a blanket and get
a hug. Yeah.
Get a hug. Exactly. Like people have been talking my ear off all day. That's not comforting. Why have to talk anymore? I just want to sit and be quiet and have the glow of home around me or whatever.
And I do think too that, the emojis we use now, these are your emotional communications.
So important.
Where this is so much like a Gemini moon, where you're sending a heart, you're sending a kisses, you're blowing, and there's all these faces, and you could say I'm eating cake and I'm playing football, and it's all these emotional emojis. This is what they are. They're just emotions we're having. If you've got a tear running down the face, they're able to express themselves through basic emojis.
And if you have anyone in your life who is so anti-emoji, and you're trying to sort of repress yourself when you're texting them, like, oh yeah, that's right, this person hates emojis, you might want to find out where their moon is, because
it's so true. And another interesting thing is I recently met a guy who came here to Canada to visit, who really didn't have much English, but he was family, and they say that he actually communicates with us and us English-speaking Canadians through emojis, saying, love you, have a nice day, the sun's shining. And it surpasses language through, and this is how you can communicate. So it's with emotion, right?
You hear that, haters? It's not all about just silly tweens, like sending exactly
piles of stuff.
It's about communicating across the generations, across language barriers, across cultural barriers. Because what is an emoji? It's a face. It's a representation of a face
with feeling.
Representing emotions.
Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes a vegetable or a coffee mug or.
Well, this is it. It's it's a great way to, especially those facial ones, saying, "How do you feel?" "Oh, I'm feeling a bit sad today," and you get this emoji saying, "Oh."
Someone asks how your day was, and you send just back the teeth gritted emoji. You're like, "Oh no, it's time for a drink after work." You just know, right?
Yeah. It's very interesting how that has come as almost as a language of emotion. So that's
100% language of emotions. That is a great way to wrap up Moon in Gemini.
Moon in Gemini. Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay, so moving on. Our next one would then be the Moon in Cancer.
Yeah, and boy, do I have some experience with this.
Let's hear it.
Not only does my partner of 25 years have Moon in Cancer, but at some point, I remember I was putting everyone's charts everyone who I knew, all my friends and family would go into my 100 free charts on astro.com or whatever software I was using at the time. And I would always calculate everybody's charts exactly. Yeah. And a ridiculous number of people who I have become friends with and become very deeply enmeshed with over the last several years have Moon in Cancer. I don't know what I'm doing to attract these people. I only have one thing in Cancer, and that is Saturn. And it's, and the South Node, which, whatever. But, boy, do I attract that Moon in Cancer. And do I like my friends to be nurturing? Maybe. I guess this is what you could read about me, I suppose.
You see, it does. You see, the main thing is, I think it trines to your ascendant, so it's an easy connection.
It is an easy connection that way, for sure.
And you're probably not scared of people who burst into tears about something.
Oh my God, that's a great way to put it. Oh. This is funny, and I don't know if it's funny or weird, but and maybe it's because that is right there conjunct my Saturn, but in the 8th house, no less. Mm-hmm. But honestly, when I've had friends burst into tears, it's like, it's almost like my inner Florence Nightingale suddenly like chimes in. It's like, oh my God, I can help, I can rescue, I can fix this. It's not like I love it when my friends burst into tears, but I do the opposite of shying away. I've had so many.
You lean in.
I lean in, and I've had so many friends and not even close friends. I had a former manager at a restaurant where I worked ages ago. I asked why he seemed sort of distant and cold that night, because usually we had such a banter and lovely sort of fun, sarcastic sort of friendship. And I said, all right, what's wrong? Are you upset with me towards the end of the night? And he burst into tears. And we were both in our 20s, early 20s. He was kind of a tough cookie, very sort of, sarcastic kind of guy. And he burst into tears. And I just grabbed him and held him as tightly as I possibly could. And my shoulder was wet from him crying on my shoulder for like a good 10 minutes. No one was in the restaurant anymore. And I just hugged him as tightly as I could. And we were really good friends after that. I mean, we were pretty good friends before, work friends, but that was the moment. And
there you go. You see, you do have that easy connection there to who you are, really.
100%. Yeah. And of course, I don't remember what moon sign he had, but he was a Gemini, and that's the quick-witted, sarcastic part. But yeah, just
this is it.
Yeah,
because often we have emotional things bottled up, held down. And when they come out, you don't necessarily want to talk about everything, but it still needs to come out.
Yeah, and he absolutely did not want to talk about it. His father had gone into the hospital, and he was just facing, for the first time, a health crisis with one of his parents, because we were in our 20s. And it's kind of, you're blithely ignorant that kind of thing can happen. And all of a sudden, bam, mortality, right? And so that was that moment. But
that's Moon in Cancer.
Moon in Cancer, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Now we're going to have a look at the Moon in Leo.
Yes. And you are a Leo, but you do not have the moon in Leo.
I do not, no.
And I can't think of anyone off the top of my head who has that. You are a consulting astrologer. What stories have you heard?
Oh, it's Moon in Leo is, I want to say, dramatic emotions. The emotions come out dramatically.
I love it. Yes.
And typically this can be someone not necessarily throwing a tantrum, but having an emotional response to whatever it is. And I had a friend who had some kids, and we'd go to dinner to the local restaurant, and they'd sit there crying at the table, I don't want to eat my peas. And the tears are rolling down the kid's face. And as an outsider, I'm thinking, what's wrong with the kid? Did it eat some glass, or what's going? No, it's the peas are touching my potatoes. And it was over the top emotional responses. And they were young children, but for sure. I think these people, as they get older, still can have dramatic outbursts.
Yes.
Whether super happy or super not. And it is the sign of the actor, isn't it? The Leo thing. So,
and also it's a fire sign. And to call back what we said about Moon in Aries, which is the previous fire sign. There are 3. Yeah. We'll get to all of them. Whereas the Moon in Aries, when it has that outburst, it can seem like a violent outburst. It can seem like they're mad at you, like it's an aggressive thing. Mm-hmm. With the Moon in Leo, I would think it's more like, why me? Why is this happening to me?
Yes.
Like the drama,
and
like
the tears.
The tears streaming emoji.
Yes. It's just tragedy has struck, and but it is how they're feeling. This is how it's being expressed.
Absolutely. And one of I don't know if I've quoted Joe Rogan much on this show, but he's one of my faves. And one of the things he says, which is very insightful, is that the worst thing that's happened to you is the worst thing that's happened to you. Mm-hmm. So whoever you are, whatever that thing is for you, that is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, regardless of how you compare to anybody else in your life or in the world that you know about. You can't just say, well, they're suffering so much more in North Korea. My suffering is nothing. Whatever's happened to you, that's the worst thing in your experience. is your worst experience.
That's true. That's true.
That is very much Moon in Leo, I would think.
Yeah. It's you take it with you, and you can haul those emotions out later on and say,
well, yeah.
So it's huge. I think it can be huge, and I know we're not laughing at them, but
no.
It can come out unexpectedly for other signs. Looking on, you think, gosh,
yes,
what the heck?
Wow.
But it's just who they are. They're expressing their chart.
Yeah.
So that in itself is very interesting
and valuable to know, because this is why we do this, because it gives you a little bit of insight. It gives you something to kind of latch onto and be like, okay, maybe they're not crazy.
Yes.
maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe this is just them expressing part of their chart that doesn't look like my chart, doesn't make sense to me, but it's normal for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very true.
And what's the best way to handle?
Well, really, it's a matter of awareness, I think.
Yeah.
That some people who've got, the moons are in all sorts of signs, and there are other factors naturally. Yeah. But when you grow up, you tend to get a grip on your emotions, and you're not necessarily crying at work, but people still do.
Oh my God.
So this is the thing. Something will make everybody cry, and it's usually different for each sign.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing when you're dealing with the moon. It's not logical. It's not what you want to present to someone. It's when you're down. This is the thing that just kicks you over the edge.
Yes.
And
exactly.
And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing anyone can do about it, but maybe wait it out or deal with you in the right way. Yeah. If they know your moon sign, if it's a moon in Gemini, maybe talk it out.
Yes.
If it's a moon in Cancer, maybe give them a hug.
Yeah.
Moon in Leo, let them
do it.
Have their tantrum.
Yes.
And then move on.
Move on.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So let's have a look at the moon in Virgo.
All righty. I'm ready. This is where I am.
Is this you?
This is me.
Arwynne, you're up.
Well, let's see. Moon in Virgo. Yes, we like things tidy.
Mm-hmm.
We feel uncomfortable when there's disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that everything needs to be spotless all the time. Certainly not in other people's environments. In my environment, yes. If there's the sink is dingy or there's socks everywhere on the floor, I'm going to feel not as happy.
But what makes you cry?
What makes me cry?
When do you trigger that limbic brain?
When I feel like I've failed, I guess.
Oh, okay. And you're maybe not measuring up to perfection, perhaps?
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah. When I feel like everything I've done is
so you're upset with yourself.
It's a very internally based thing. It's weirdly, I think, actually that's a really good way of putting it. The times that other people have, quote unquote, made me cry are few and far between compared to the times that I've made myself cry by not matching up to my expectations or when life just seems like I'm doing my best and why isn't it good enough?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tears of frustration.
Tears of frustration.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think that the Virgo moon is a very, you don't necessarily have bursts of outbursts.
No.
You're always calm when I see you.
Yeah, I do my best. I mean, I may swear and I may, verbally go off about things that annoy me a lot, but actually that's kind of comfort food for me too. I kind of like ranting.
Yes.
I mean, that's another moon in Virgo thing.
You
feel comfortable when I'm bickering about something and ranting about something that annoyed me. It's not that I'm going to try to ruin anyone's career or write a letter to the editor or yell or try to bring the system down. But
it's just the nature of Virgo to be slightly more.
I like to bitch a little. Yeah.
Like to have something to say.
Just a little bitching.
I understand.
Light, low level, constant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if dinner's not on the table, it's not the end of your world, is it?
No. But I can wait. I could even take a nap and then wake up when dinner's ready. It's fine. That's not going to be it for me. No.
Great. Yeah.
But if someone says, this is, I hate to pass out kryptonite, but yeah, like one of the worst things someone could say to me is like, why are you always complaining? Or like, it's really so bad. Like, what? You just wasted so many words on complaining about standing in line at Starbucks. Really? Like if someone just didn't get me to the point where they were annoyed that I had to whine about something minor, we would not be good, compatible friends if that was something that bothered them.
Interesting. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's great. I mean, the moon is, it's in Virgo. It's a theme in your chart.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, it's conjunct the sun and Mercury. It's pretty comfortable there.
Yeah.
So.
There you go.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, moving on. Let's have a look at the moon in Libra.
Yeah. I mean, we spoke a little about moon in Libra with our fake fictional mother examples.
Yes.
And how the child who grows up with the moon in Libra might feel like she, either had like the quote unquote kind of perfect mother, not the most nurturing, but the mother who had it all together, who was like maybe a fashion icon.
Stepford Wives or something.
Exactly, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like the mother who just had the perfect career, the perfect relationship. She was always put together. She dressed well.
She balanced her checkbook.
Maybe they figured they were best friends, or like people always were saying, "Oh, are you sisters?" or something.
Mm-hmm.
Moon in Libra is someone who feels comfortable when they are presenting themselves in a pleasing way.
Yes.
When people don't see the frayed edges, that's something that's kind of where I said what the moon in Virgo nightmare is. The moon in Libra nightmare, I think, would be the come as you are party, where suddenly like the lights are on and you've just woken up and your hair is a mess and you're in a ratty nightgown with holes in it and the bathtub hasn't been cleaned in months and suddenly there's cameras in your apartment going, hello. Like, no. Oh my God. Yeah. Or people can hear you fighting with your partner, like in public. God, no, we must present a unified front. We must be the perfect couple or the perfect family. Yeah. Can't fight in front of the neighbors or the friends.
So, yeah.
God forbid, like that people should see that you're not perfect.
And I know if you relate the moon in Libra to the food situation, it's all about having a balanced diet.
Yeah.
So this is the person who will make sure that they've got their B vitamins, their C vitamins, their this and their that. And they end up forcing themselves to eat food for its balanced nutrition rather than the comfort food. The comfort comes from having the balance on the plate.
Right.
Not necessarily relishing what is being eaten.
Yeah.
And that's quite of an interesting thing as well.
People talk about like, because, Venus rules Libra. Libra is a sign of love and all that whole thing. It's not about like love as like a comforting, nurturing kind of thing. It's about love as the perfect platonic ideal of love, which means everything in it. Yeah. So that's the Stepford wife is a very good example of that because it's not about the passionate love that's going to take over your life. It's about the love that is going to know its place so that you can go to work, you can come back, kids are all dressed and properly cleaned and dinner's on the table and you've got a martini sitting there waiting for you to belabor the 1950s metaphor. It is not about the love that's going to be like calling you at work and being like ranting about something that's happening and you have to deal with it, or why don't you talk to me anymore? Like we're not the way we were when we first met, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
No, that's not what you want with Moon in Libra.
That's good. That's a good one. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to the moon in Scorpio.
Yes. I believe we have some personal experience with this one as well.
We do. So, so yes, it's very secretive.
Someone we know.
So even though I have this double sun, this double Leo business, that's what people see. The moon, I put my hand up to a moon in Scorpio, and people don't know this unless they know me.
Yeah.
And it is let me talk about the food first, because I always find this interesting, and it's to do with, I don't want to say cold food, but seafood, fish, cold food, and not cold food, but I don't need to have a searing steak. That is not the meal for me. Yeah. The meal for me is some salmon mousse and things like that. Some cooked shrimp or what have you.
Yeah.
Nibbly type things.
Nibbly things. Yeah. Little leftovers, little.
Yeah, and I can stand over the kitchen sink and I don't have to have the whole thing, although I will do it, but it's not going to make me ill whereas I know people say, well, I have to sit at the table and where's the meat and potatoes? Yeah. That is not it at all. So there's that. But in a way, the emotional outbursts are, you will never see them.
Yeah.
It's you really do have to be close in the inner circle to see what really upsets me.
Yeah.
But I would say that in general, I don't have emotional outbursts. Yeah. Maybe once in 10 years, and they're memorable. So I think my children, more than anyone, will have seen these because they really did test me at certain times.
Right.
But apart from that, I'm not getting, here's the thing, I'm not getting emotionally worked up about things enough to have an emotional outburst.
Because Scorpio is about the deep things.
Yes.
You're not going to have an outburst over some little thing at work.
Yeah. Or the lineup at Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
I mean, you might enjoy the bickering about it for other reasons, but yeah, it's not going to.
It's not going to.
It's not deep.
Things that do upset me, which probably would upset other people, is I once saw a car accident and some woman got hit by a car, and that, although I helped at the time, when I got home, then I had the reaction, but it was in the privacy of my own home, and I thought, good Lord, another minute, and that would have been me hit by that car, and you wonder where these things go. So they were definitely life and death, but I didn't know her from Adam, but still.
Yeah, but you remember that forever.
Yes. So you've got that going on. But the memories are long. I'll tell you that, if you do a good deed for me, I will remember you.
Yeah.
When I win the lottery and things like that.
Yeah.
But not necessarily, no.
Yeah.
I don't get in a rage about things. So, no.
Yeah. And that is so interesting because my mother has Moon in Scorpio. And all of those things that you just said resonate 100%. Very also private about, personal issues. And so, no, I won't be bringing up any, what has caused her to fly into a rage. But honestly, when I'm trying to remember, like the last time I actually saw her enraged,
10 years ago.
I mean, maybe longer.
Yeah, I know.
And I can think of maybe one or two times when I was a teenager. And of course,
when
being
your mother
of a teenage girl, when else would you become enraged if not then?
Yes.
And it was definitely a time where she was worried for my physical safety.
Yes.
And the kind of woman I would become and the kind of, things I would allow to, happen to me if I wasn't careful, those types of things, these types of lectures that, I may have inspired as like a teenage girl wandering around blithely doing what I wanted.
Yes.
And those are the kind of, and those words totally stick with you because they come from like this deep primal Scorpio place that is not represented anywhere else in the chart. And it's like this boiling, like
survival.
But survival. Exactly. So Moon in Scorpio, not to be trifled with, but if you do trifle, you might not even know it because you might not even be a blip on the radar unless it's life or death.
There's that. Thing. Yeah, it really is. It's those moments. It's life or death moments, to be honest, I think.
It's almost the opposite of the Moon in Leo in that sense.
Yes.
It's...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's So, and maybe other people will experience it differently, but that's what they'll tell you, but you won't know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so moving on, we're now going to have a look at the Moon in Sagittarius.
Yeah.
I actually know someone quite well who has the Moon in Sagittarius, and there is a lot of emotional outburst. Again, it's the fire sign.
Yeah, fire sign.
And this is the position I call the flamethrower moon, because when something annoys them or they get worked up about something, there's this massive volcanic outburst, which is different to the Aries one, I think, and then it's over within like half an hour.
Yeah.
But the outburst goes out. Everyone else around them is going, oh, what happened? The lava's still landing on me.
Right.
And they've forgotten all about it. And they say, what are you talking about? I wasn't upset. What are you talking about? Oh, well, yes, you were,
Yeah.
So I do think there is no holding back.
Yeah.
It can be a very in-your-face emotion. And even getting the lineup at Starbucks would definitely trigger these sort of things. Or road rage, I think, comes in here too.
Yeah.
Very often there's no filter holding it back because it's Sagittarius, which tends to be outgoing and projectile.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to say about that. It doesn't sound very good, but I mean, So going back to the food thing, the Moon in Sagittarius is very much someone who's interested in an international palate.
Yeah.
They want Indian on Monday, Chinese on Tuesday, whatever it is. Never the same thing twice.
Yeah.
It's quite a demanding cooking routine if you have someone like this in your house.
Right.
And also they like, is it that the Spanish, the tapas thing where you've got a bowl of this and a bowl of that and all of these things, variety and trying out new restaurants around the block. Whereas some of us with different moon signs are quite happy to go to the guy on the corner and order the same steak because you know what you're getting.
Right.
With Sagittarius, the adventure in food, actually,
Yeah.
And it may spill over to wine as well, or, different beers, or whatever your taste happens to be.
Totally.
This is someone who's going to be continuously trying new things.
Yeah.
Fusion food and things, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can totally see that.
I think that's one expression, definitely, of Sagittarian moons.
Yeah, I love it. That's great.
So now let's have a look at the moon in Capricorn.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience of people with this?
I do have one experience. I had an ex who I was with for 6 years. So my second longest relationship before my current one.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking back to like what we argued about, because that is, not to go into obviously like too much autobiographical detail, but probably most of what we argued about, and this may have to do with the fact that we were in our 20s, was money. It was, mostly it was a financial thing, just the managing of money or whatever, and just practical things.
Who's going to take the dog to the vet?
I mean, he was a Leo, so I wouldn't say he was unsentimental in any way, but definitely didn't get ruffled easily. No. Like he wasn't like a histrionic or like that kind of thing. Very easygoing generally. But
takes a while. This is a slow burn as well. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
And I do think as well, if we reflect this back to the food issue, that people with the moon in Capricorn are very keen on crackers, dry foods, therefore pizza bases, pastries, and things like that. They enjoy those kind of foods, but also they're the ones who like dehydrated onions in a jar in the kitchen, so they're ready for when Armageddon comes. They've got their jars of stuff that you and I don't even think we need. Organized so that there will not be this food.
Oh, we had a library of spices.
Oh.
And I've never had a library of spices since then. But it was all about having a library of spices, having a spice for every occasion. And
exactly.
Having,
all eventualities that a meal could be prepared.
And he cooked everything. Back then,
none of this takeout business.
No, I made toast, and that was about it.
Toast,
he would cook it for friends. Friends would come over for dinner, and it would take forever. It was always worth it. It was delicious.
Cooking.
But my God, did it take forever.
And the actual business of him preparing food for friends to enjoy.
And dicing everything and
it was his way of showing his emotion, his love for his friends, and so
100%.
on.
He actually wanted to be a chef. That was one of his.
Well, you want someone like that to be your chef, don't you?
Oh my God, yeah. He went to cooking school actually after we broke up, and hopefully he's doing that brilliantly somewhere.
It's emotional food, and they can be feeders actually as well. But it's an okay sign actually for the moon, even though it's not the detriment thing. It's the slow, time-consuming. And you don't just gobble it when you're standing over the sink.
Oh my God, no. Like, that would be the worst insult. It would be if someone was like, "Oh yeah, it was fine. I'm full."
Well, you ask for the salt, and they think it's seasoned.
Oh my God, no, exactly. No, it had to be perfect, and it had to be appreciated for sure. And just one other example that's not a food example. Every once in a while, I like to have a celebrity example.
Yeah.
Cher,
right?
The wonderful, famous actress and singer, has moon in Capricorn. And one of my favorite examples of moon in Capricorn in one single scene, is if you've seen the movie Moonstruck.
Yes. With
Nicolas Cage, there's this one scene where she finally flies off the handle and gets mad at him and slaps him and screams, "Snap out of it." That to me is also a quintessential moon in Capricorn moment, because she's just this unflappable like force of nature with her wild hair and her like ice cheekbones. Yeah. But then she just has enough of it, and it's just like, no, just stop. Enough. Snap out of it.
It's interesting how these reactions that we have are coming from our moon through the nature of the sign. Yeah, it's great. Totally. All right, so now we're getting to the moon in Aquarius.
Yeah.
And now I always see this one as we relate it to food and nurturing through food, that if you have the moon in Aquarius, you tend to have a mother who is always busy doing something with her groups anyway, and she tends to say, "There's pizza in the fridge, I'm going out to my music group."
Yeah.
And children with this, or people with this Aquarius sign, feel that their mother just wasn't really paying attention, but she's into instant food, and she'll say, "Oh, I've ordered you a pizza," because she's using the internet to bring the food into the house.
100%.
And she's not slaving over it, not chopping it, not growing it in the garden.
No.
It's all just coming, the latest fangled thing about how to get food.
Here's my credit card, order Uber Eats, get what you want.
The pizza, yeah. So there's not a lot of attention paid to nutrition and organization, but you can order something if you want, and what's the big deal? Feed your mind rather than your body. So that tends to be, I think, how the moon in Aquarius shows often. It really is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting when we talk about parenting, because obviously the moon is, very much about your parents and your parenting style and how you perceive your parents. That, maybe someone who grew up with a mother who had the moon, someone with the moon in Aquarius, they might not have thought of their mother as a nurturing person, but maybe as they get older, they will appreciate, she was very smart, she was very savvy, she's cool, maybe. But
she's up to date.
Yeah, but they're not going to be like, she was like the best mother on the block, whatever. Maybe all the other kids will think, your mother's the coolest. Yeah. She lets us order pizza. She's always dressed to the nines. She knows all the apps, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But, she's not like the traditional.
Yes,
certainly,
exactly. Yeah. That's about really all I've got for moon in Aquarius.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so let's move on to the moon in Pisces.
Yes. So it's the final water sign. It's the final sign. It's the final water sign. Water signs, obviously, moon is considered kind of a watery sort of body and
emotional.
Emotional. We talked about Cancer. We talked about Scorpio, and the moon in Pisces is arguably like the pinnacle of the emotional moons.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Now, again, if we look to this towards how you're nurtured through food and your mother's need, this tends to be, again, it's the coldest, the cuts, it's a lot of fish, and it's not necessarily flaming hot or necessarily cold. You've got your smoothies, you've got your soups, and they will actually pay attention. But this is the mother who could end up saying, if you don't eat this, you'll make me sad. So
the guilt trip.
There can be as a way to get the kids to eat their stuff or something like that. So you can then, with this mother as well, end up overeating because I want to make mom happy, so we're going to eat that stuff she cooked.
She'll be sad if we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and
there's children starving in other countries. There's I slaved over, even if she didn't.
That's right. And so you've got all that as well. Yeah. But, we've all got a mother somewhere. We've all got our sign. But you can see this often coming through with this sort of parent, that if you have the moon in Pisces, you may get that kind of response from your mother at the nurturing thing. Yeah. And it starts at the beginning when they're feeding the milk to the baby and they eat this, mommy made this and blah, blah. Yeah. And there's a lot of emotion involved in the actual feeding of
because if the child doesn't eat, it's a rejection of the mother.
Yes. And then, of course, when they get married, the same thing with the husband. Well, I slaved all day making this, whatever it is. Yeah. And he doesn't even come home because he went out to the pub with the boys. Right. It does create issues. Yeah. So I have seen this. There's a couple of people in my family with this placement. And, and you think, well, roll with it, girl, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But it is a very emotional response to the rejection of, she didn't eat my chicken or something. I mean, it's really Scorpio saying it really doesn't matter, but people can get worked up about it. Yeah. Or they go and they order food from the takeout and they say, I ordered a cheeseburger and I actually got a chicken burger. Then there's tears. And you're thinking, well, again, there is a lot of emotion hooked into food and nurturing. So
interesting. And it's almost a rejection of themselves or like if they're not being seen or recognized, if someone gets the order wrong or if someone forgets what their favorite food is and they make them something they've said they don't like, and it's like, how you don't even know me.
Exactly. And you've got to be paying attention when you know someone with a moon in Pisces, because you will inadvertently upset them and you may not know about it because they're not going to throw a tantrum, but you need to make sure you're tuned in. You will remember it. Yes.
Yeah, forever.
So with these people, if I have a friend with this placement and they say, well, let's go out on a Friday night, I'll say, well, you pick the place because honest to God, I don't really care what we're eating or whether it's this or that, and let them choose because it's more important to them than it is to me. Yeah. I'm more interested in the company I'm with rather than what's on the menu. So anyway.
And that's an interesting thing too, because all of this talk about food and moon signs and whatnot, if you find yourself left cold by this conversation, you might be similar to Alison and I in this way, because we've discussed a few times that as astrologers who both are kind of not really lunar people.
Correct.
The moon is barely attached to anything in my chart.
Yeah.
I have a wonderful mother. So it's not about that. It's just about the integration of this planet. It's okay for me. It's fine. And for you, we've both talked about this. And it's funny because like, I agree with you about restaurants. When people say like, well, where do you want to go? What do you feel like? And I'm one of those awful people, I've said this before, who's like, I don't know, I could eat whatever, give me 3 options, whatever. You know, if you feel like you want something particular, I will find something on the menu to eat. It's rare that I have, some overwhelming desire for something very in particular. I care more about, as you say, the company or the setting or what's
the ambiance.
The ambiance. And is there a view? Are we on the patio? Do they have margaritas? Whatever. I'll find something to eat.
Whether you're having steak or chicken or what the heck, it's never going to be an issue with me. Or,
and some people have this interesting, like, I will try anything once, food wise. This is another thing. I mean, I don't have really deep emotional detesting about very many foods. I don't like green peppers. I think that their texture is waxy and gross. But that's a very Virgo thing too, is the texture of a food, right? Yeah, I'll try anything once. I don't have a disgust reaction with a lot of things. No.
So it is interesting. It does depend on where your moon is placed, whether food is huge. And it is for many people. Mm-hmm. It truly is. Right. And the emotional connection you have with people is huge for many people.
Yeah. Cooking shows are huge, even with people who don't cook. Oh, my God.
Yes. There's a restaurant on every corner in this city.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great, Arwynne. So we've had a look at the moon. We've had a look at the main features of what the moon is. We've had a quick look at the moon through many of the signs. And I do believe this is a topic that we can certainly address again.
Definitely. I mean, we can talk about the moon in different houses, the aspects.
So much to talk about. So much to unpack there. And so I look forward to chatting with you about that again in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you for inviting me, Alison.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the 2 main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.